What's going on, everyone? And thank you for tuning in to episode number 4. I'm here with Will Fisher today, and we are going to talk about sales and understanding the consumer psychology. Will, say what's up to the crowd and tell us what you do.
Everyone, how we doing? Pumped to be here with you, Ash, and chopping it up a little bit about sales. A little background on me. I'm a commercial account executive at Smartsheet. So I've been working in the software sales industry now for about 5 years. So yeah, excited to dive into it today for sure.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it off. I mean, you said you've been in sales for 5 years. What was your path leading up to it, and how did you start rising through the ranks of sales?
Yeah, so funny enough, when I was in school, I did a few internships, insurance sales. So quite a different field than software, very different, a little bit older industry. But actually there was a career fair on campus one day. I met someone that was working at a software company in Minneapolis, my hometown, Minnesota, obviously, so had ties there, and really got kind of drawn into the excitement of the software world and kind of what that would offer. And it's something I've always been interested in. And my dad actually, he works in the software industry too. So, I ended up applying for an entry-level software sales role, got it. And then from there, I think it was interesting starting off because it was really the heart of the pandemic. There was not an office environment. That was just not a thing. Everything was shut down. Everything was remote. So when I first started, I was super pumped to, get into, a real job and start making money, start working, meeting people. And I was super excited for the whole office dynamic, which just wasn't a thing at the time. So it was a little bit of a challenge right away, just kind of, getting my feet under me, trying to learn in a virtual environment rather than in person. We can just tap someone, hey, can you help me out with this real quick? Or you're just naturally hearing people talk and kind of their talk tracks and how they sell. But really, I think one thing right away that really helped me is just I had the mentality of, hey, I'm not going to be afraid to make mistakes and fail. Like in sales, you can't be afraid to, pick up the phone and just kind of just start doing it. And you learn what doesn't work, you learn what does work, but it just takes those reps, I think, right away when you're first starting off to get comfortable with it.
That's a good way of kind of explaining, especially since pandemic. I mean, sales is a role where the more rapport you build, especially in person, that's a whole lot easier versus virtual. That's a different format to try and adjust to sell to and to learn. So that's actually interesting that you got both sides of the experience. A little bit on the software side. So for anyone watching, especially in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, you know that the government's in our backyard. And deal cycles in government can be anywhere from a year to multi-year. Heck, I mean, some could be in months, but software is totally different. Shorter deal cycles, more subscription-based. But so explain software sales to those who aren't familiar.
Yeah, I would say, one thing that's pretty unique about the software sales motion is, like you said, a little bit more fast-paced, right? Where you've got deals and opportunities that are flowing every single month. Some that, all of a sudden you might have one call, it goes great. They know exactly what your product does, how it will help them, and hey, let's just get this done. Where there are also two more strategic, longer-term cycles and deals where you're really kind of digging into their objectives, what they're looking to solve for. But I would say too, with software, it's typically a subscription based, right? So you've got there's a lot of times annual contracts, sometimes monthly, where hey, you've got to manage that as well and make sure that the customer's happy, they're getting value from your product, rather than just kind of sell and just kind of forget it, right? So I think that's one thing that's a little bit unique is you've got to kind of have that constant, love and attention with the customer, making sure that, hey, this tool is doing what we said it would do. It's actually helping, improve efficiencies for you. I think ultimately saving time and automating things that's really the goal with it.
With an annual contract, you have essentially a year timeline to figure out, are they going to pay the same, pay more, maybe pay less? Either way, you're doing some form of activities and probably have more than just one customer. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
So even with all those activities, I'm sure you've seen what works, what doesn't work. You have a lot of plays going on. What are some of those behaviors that you do as someone in sales that works well to get a deal across the finish line and ideally more money, versus behaviors that just turn people off?
Yeah, I think really I'll start with, what might turn people off is, I think people can sense, I think there's a few things, right? You think of the typical used car salesman archetype, right? Where you're kind of pushy and, have got that more generic kind of scripted. When you're talking to them, it's like, okay, when you're talking to someone, you can kind of tell their intentions, kind of the vibe, like where they're going. But I think one thing people can kind of fall into is over-promising, especially with software, where it's like, you hear something, they've got a pain point or a problem they're looking to solve for. Your product may or may not be a good fit, but I think sometimes what can turn people off is you're the yes man, right? Where you're saying yes to everything. Oh yeah, no problem. It'll be great for that. Yes. If you're doing that too much and it's not as much of a conversation and just kind of advising like, hey, this might be a great tool for this aspect of what you're looking to do, but maybe not for this piece. Yeah. I think that really helps to build trust, and ultimately I think people want to buy from people, right? Yeah. They don't want to buy from, someone that, is robotic, or maybe that they don't trust. Like, they want to have that, that trusting, open communication. And I think that's really, where I've found success. I know other people have found success is where, hey, let's just, be honest if we're a good fit here, and just have that, open communication. Ultimately we want to help customers out rather than just try to sell something that we know won't provide any value and they're just wasting their money. Yeah.
It seems like it's okay to have friction. And I think that's what gets lost, because, whether real estate, whether software, a lot of things are sales that we don't know, but the moment you can't acknowledge that there won't always be 100% yes or 100% meeting your needs. It's, at the end of the day, is the buyer ready? Can they stomach whatever they don't agree with? Yeah.
Well, I think too, I'll add, it is a little bit harder to, kind of build that rapport in a virtual environment. I mean, I've pretty much 100% solely sold in a virtual environment where it's an online Zoom meeting, right? Where, when I'm meeting with clients and customers, it's important to you have to kind of go the extra mile to build that trust, and just, like I said, be a human. It's like talking about each other's personal lives. I know, like, a lot of times we've scheduled time, it's kind of hard. Obviously we got to focus on objectives, but I think too, just, having a sense of humor, or maybe like you see something in the news that reminds you of them, or maybe what's relevant at their company or what they're looking to do. I think those little things go a long way, rather than just kind of boom, I'm gonna dive into this, this demo, or I'm gonna dive into, our agenda today. Yeah. Let's be humans about it.
Let's talk. Yeah. Get to know each other.
Yeah.
So would you say that's like one of the bigger elements in the good behaviors toward sales, or like working with customers?
I would say so. And I think another thing too is just do what you say you're going to do, right? Yeah. Where I think it's an easy way to build trust and build credibility, where, it could be something as simple as a follow-up email where you say, hey, I'm going to get back to you by the end of the day. And stuff comes up. So, sometimes it might be hard to get that, reply back. But if you say you're going to do it, do it. Because I think, that's how, people learn to trust you. They know that you're going to deliver on what you say. So I think it's, whether it's, hey, I'm going to look into this issue that you're having, right, with your product or your account. Actually do that, even though you might not get a benefit, right? You might not get a commission out of doing that and kind of going the extra mile. But I think those little things can add up. Yeah. So I would add that too.
Okay. Yeah. Does it scare you that you're on commission?
I would say, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's something where I think in today's environment as well, in the software world, for sales, it's very competitive, right? I mean, you have to be delivering constantly on your quota, on your number, and a lot of companies, you've got a base salary, but I think too, obviously, motivated to make as much money as possible, and also you are banking on that commission built in, with your lifestyle, your everyday stuff. So I would say, it's competitive out there, but I think too that's also a motivator. Yeah. When you're getting up each morning, you're trying to attack each day. That there's a bunch of other people that are doing the same thing, and if you're snoozing, who knows where you're going to be in a couple months.
Yeah, so. I know quota is a scary thing for a lot of people. You have to really be a self-starter to almost ignore it and just kind of, it sounds cliche, but manifesting the good that deals will come in, and that you will not only hit your goals, but by doing right for others, that quota will kind of hit itself. So, you know, I'm sure, you know, you're doing really well in sales. I think that's without, and you know, I think it's important to note, but I'm sure you've had a history of maybe a bad month or bad quarter, right? What do you do to stay sharp and to stay focused despite having a bad month?
Yeah, 100%. I think really the big thing for me and what I focus on, and this took time, you know, this is something that I definitely stressed out more, you know, early on in my career about, you know, missing, you know, if I was in danger of missing quota, you know, it'd be something that, hey, this isn't something I can easily kind of stay calm or get out of my head. But I think the biggest thing is controlling what you can control, right? There's only so much as a seller that we can actually control and what's in our control. A lot of it is, you know, totally depends on the buyer, right? Do they have budget? You know, what initiatives are going on right now in that company? Did someone recently get hired or fired that may influence where things are at? I think there's so many things that we really just can't control. And I think not worrying about that and just doing the little things, doing your process and just focusing on that, things tend to work out, right? When you know the right things you should be doing and that you can control, and just saying, hey, I'm going to put full effort into doing that and my energy, and I can't get too shaken up if, you know, something completely out of my control happens and maybe throws off something that, you know, an opportunity that I think is going to close. And I think too, just like the, you know, 24 or 48 hour rule, right? So if I think there's been times in my career where I've put countless hours into, you know, working with the client, working really deeply understanding their business, what they're looking to solve, and it's, you know, the product is a perfect fit, and, you know, tons of energy, time, and effort, thought go into it, and then all for at the very end when it's time to actually sign the contract, something goes south, right? And it's tough to be able to bounce back, where I think it's, hey, take the 24 or 48 to, you know, just reflect on it, say, hey, like, where maybe could I have done something different? How did this really play out? And just kind of analyze it and use it as more of like a learning moment. Like, hey, you know, in the grand scheme of things, maybe you did get feedback from them on, hey, why they decided to go with a competitor, or maybe they just decided not to move forward, and really just take that time. But after that, you just got to flush it from your memory, like Men in Black, like just you got to move on, because it's a fast-paced thing, and you're just going to get drowned with more of those negative thoughts and like, hey, you know, what could I have done? What did I do wrong? You know, you have to move on and, you know, find the next opportunity, or find kind of the next thing to focus your energy on in a positive way. Yeah.
Where do you draw the boundary when you're reflecting in that 24 to 48 period? Where do you draw the boundary between overthinking versus analyzing?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I think just even where I found where we can be real objective is actually doing it too with, I think sales is also a team game, worth noting. It's not all a lone wolf thing, right? Where, at least in my experience in the software world, there's other players that are there to help you out. Maybe engineering team, customer success manager, your director or manager, where I think too, someone who is also maybe tightly involved with the deal you were working, just getting together with them and just be like, hey, like, kind of reflecting through it and keeping objective there. Because I think if you're thinking, sitting up late at night, you know, to your own thoughts, that's where some of that overthinking can come in. So I think too, it's just trying to shut that off and just have that conversation pretty fresh, and then, you know, just moving on from that point. So.
You know, sales can be exhausting in the best way possible, and it's also very rewarding. And the reason I say that is because it's mentally taxing with the amount of, I mean, naturally you have to be a certain character to do it. You can't teach how to be empathetic. You kind of just are and have to be. But when you're having to be very empathetic for so many customers, right, and something goes south, that recovery period is tough. Now, think about a deal or any deals where, let's say, you've done all the right things. You said annual contract. 8 months in, you've done a series of activities. Let's say you've proven with data how much they've used that software. You've talked through the benefits. You've talked about use cases and how it's using it. If a customer is on that fence about making a purchase because they say, "Oh, it's we didn't budget for this, but we really like it." What is that push that you do or give, or is it like a rule of thumb you follow to get them over that finish line?
Yeah, I think it's really at that point it's kind of more of a gut feel. You kind of know, hey, is it more of is it something where it is truly just the dollars and cents, right?
Yeah.
In those scenarios, I think that's a good time where you can try to pull some levers and maybe give them a discounted offer, and do something maybe a little bit more unconventional to try to, get their eyes opened a little bit and move forward. Sometimes it's really just a timing thing on there where, hey, look, like we would love to do this. It's more of a nice to have. We just can't get this done now, or maybe it's not a priority. And that's totally fine. I think too, you have to respect that as well and understand, hey, like from their perspective, when would be a good time to kind of rehash this? And I think a big thing there is making sure when you do have those good conversations and maybe things just stall out, just, hey, staying in their ear, checking in. I think that goes a long way. Maybe like later down the road, just making sure that, hey, next time that this would come up, they know to think of Will or they know to think of Ash, right? Mm-hmm. So I think instead of just, oh, you didn't buy this, I'm just going to completely forget you exist and block you out. I feel like that's where you can maybe miss out on some of those when, they are ready to come back. So,
okay, so let's dig into that because there's a couple avenues, right? You can have that feedback session cordially. Buyer says, I'll revisit this, but thanks for this. Yeah. But then there's those really awkward situations where you thought it was going to happen, but it doesn't. And now it's a very awkward dynamic with the buyer. Yeah. How do you follow up with them? Yeah. And so that next time, so that way you kind of are still, top of mind for them, but it's not awkward the next time they talk to you.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing there is just being direct. I think it goes back to being a human, where it's, let's say you make plans with a friend, right? And, up until a half hour before, let's say you're supposed to meet at a restaurant, all of a sudden they bail out, right? Mm-hmm. You say, hey, like, what's going on there? Like, what happened, right? Where I think it would be weird not to acknowledge it. So I think that's where it's like I like just you got to have the hard conversation and just be like, hey, I thought we were going to be moving forward. We had agreed throughout the process that this was a good fit. Sounded like everything was green lit. What happened? Yeah. And if you did a good job throughout the cycle and getting to know the people you're working with, right? They'll tell you. They'll tell you what. They're not going to hide anything. They want to be open with you. So I think too, just understanding, hey, I get that this didn't happen. I think doing it in the right way, not like combative, like, hey, like I was banking on this. Why didn't you guys sign? Yeah. It's more of like, hey, like, I thought everything was going great. Like what happened? Yeah. And then just going from there, then you really know, what actually happened. Right. And it'll give you that peace of mind as well, rather than just, being, upset or pissed off about it, right? Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of this book I read. It's called Bring Yourself by Maury Tarapor. She's a negotiation professor at UPenn School of Business, and she essentially, the theme is all about leading with empathy, and you come from the approach of you're using your existing skills. You're not trying to be over salesy. You're not trying to be someone you're not. You're just using your own self. And she kind of highlights how people who are introverts, you don't have to be you don't have to suddenly start being very positive and bubbly, but you can use your introvert nature and be direct or ask like, hey, what happened? And less is more sort of a mindset. So I really like that because what you said draws parallels to just having the conversation. being yourself, being human, like taking the sales part out of it. Because I feel like there's a negative connotation of, hey, I'm in sales. It's like, oh, no, I don't want to talk to you. You're going to sell me on something.
Yeah.
But I feel like customers don't really feel that you're willing to help them out versus you're just pushing product on them. So with that said, you have, let's say in your job, you have a customer. I'm sure you encounter this all the time. You have a new customer. You say, hey, I'm Will Fisher. I'm an account executive at Smartsheet. I'm here to help with contracts, product questions, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
How do you word things, or how do you approach a conversation where a buyer is already hesitant to talk to you or share information because they think you're going to oversell them on something?
Yeah, I think being just clear about, my role, right, and like what I'm here to do. I think sometimes you can sense there's a little bit more like hesitation to talk and like actually collaborate, where it's like, hey, look, I'll even say it. I know we've actually been on calls live together where it's like, hey, look, I'm not here to just sell you something. I'm not here to just throw something at you and, tell you to spend money on something that's not going to help you. My job is to really just understand, your business, some of the problems you're facing, and like, can we help or not? So I think too, just letting them know, it's kind of like, being a doctor, right? You got to ask the right questions and try to uncover, where you can help and prescribe the right thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when, you have to let them know, hey, I'm not just like asking all these questions, so I'm not just going to come in and demo you something just to do it. I need for us to have the open communication so I can understand where we could potentially help. And maybe we can't. Maybe we can't, and I'll be open with you. So I think too, just acknowledging like, hey, here's what I'm here to do. This isn't meant to be a song and dance or like a smoke screen or anything like that. And I think too, being open right away when, hey, maybe you do identify something that will cost them money, letting them know that, right? I think right away saying, hey, look, like, I think this would be great. Just so you know, this is going to be an investment on your end. This isn't something that's free. Is it worthwhile still talking about? Because the worst thing is when you get all the way to the end and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, that's going to cost you this much money. Oh, we didn't budget for this. We didn't account for this. So I think too, just nailing that right away, I think just, clears the air. Is this actually something where I want to spend my time, or is it worth spending time? And for them as well, you don't want to waste anyone's time.
So what if a customer shuts you out? They said, after what you just said, I want to understand your business. I want to see where I can get plugged in and help you out. What if they say, no, we're okay? Do you just not talk to them?
I think too, you can't give up that easy, right? Where it's like, so assuming everything's going great then, and just kind of say, assuming everything's running perfectly. And I think too, going in with the perspective of potential challenges that particular role and that person is probably facing. There's a reason they're on a call with you too. It's like, why did you take the call? Mm-hmm. What are your goals of what do you want to get out of this? I think that's something too, where it's like starting off the meeting, hey, like in an ideal world, if let's say it's a 30-minute call, what are you hoping to take away from this? Like ideally at the end, and let's focus on that, right? But yeah, I think too, just being, taking that approach is something I've done.
I want to ask you like a very general question. I know this is not cookie cutter, but do you think there's more art in persistence or more art in the follow-up? So content versus frequency. What would you lean more into?
Oh man, I would say the follow-up, because I think too, if you can really strike that chord where, hey, let's say, you show them that, like, for example, like I said, assuming everything's running great, you're probably not experiencing XYZ problem. And let's say that they are, right? Maybe it's visibility into resourcing, like who's working on what projects. Maybe that they really don't have a great way to do that today, and just let them open up. But I think that's really, like, anyone can be persistent, but not everyone can, have more of that pinpoint follow-up and really just stand out from maybe the rest of the people who are maybe just, when do you want to talk about this? When do you want to revisit it? Mm-hmm. It's like, here's why, maybe I've I just helped a customer who's in the same role as you, doing the same sort of thing. Are you not experiencing that?
Yeah. And okay, so with that said, I think you can use that strategy often, and ultimately a lot of sellers can use that. How do you find time to either develop new strategies or focusing on your craft and really getting more experience with it? Because I always hear, and especially in real estate, this is the kind of mindset I live in. We're in a very crappy market, but if you can sell in the down market, you could sell in any market. So how do you hone in on that craft? Like, what is there like a resource you look into, or just how would you go about it?
I think a number of things. I think too, you kind of get in your routine, right? When you're selling a specific product or working for a specific company where, hey, you've got the approach you're comfortable with, but everything's always changing. So you have to get, you could have a couple great quarters, great year of sales, but you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
If you stay in it, you're going to get lapped. You're not going to improve. And I think one big thing is collaborating with other people that are doing well. The other people that are successful, getting together with them, pick their brain. Hey, what are some of the things that you're running into? What's working well? I think that's something that I've done and that really has helped me stay kind of fresh and on top of it and not just get in that lull. I think too, like a big thing for me is just continuing to be plugged into kind of sales leaders and on LinkedIn. I think there's great voices out there to follow that, just are posting content and little nuggets and things that you can just implement in your day to day. I think one in particular, 30 Minutes to President's Club. It's a podcast about sales, and
got to check that out.
They've got they'll bring on a guest every time, talk through a different topic, and about the sales process. Really anything under the sun. But I think too, just in staying plugged into current events and just the overall having relevant things and like valuable messaging that you can get out to customers or having those conversations that isn't just, hey, like, how's the weather out in Chicago right now? So it's tough because, when you get into a groove and you've gotten some experience under your belt, sometimes you can think, oh, like, I've got this down. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I know how to sell this. But I think too, you can't fall into that. I would recommend, don't get too comfortable.
You
can't get too high, can't get too high, can't get too low. And stay plugged in with the people that have that experience. And I think too, mentorship as well. Like, have those people that have been around and been in the game for a really long time, people that you trust and that, want to invest in you and helping you. I think that's key.
So last question here. What advice would you give to anyone in sales today or someone who is looking to start their career in sales?
I would say, it's not going to be easy. It's not built for everyone, but I think the biggest thing is you can't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone, especially starting out. I think you have to be willing to, put in the reps and, get on the phone and make those uncomfortable calls, and, you're going to get told no a lot in sales. So I think too, not letting that get you down, use it as a learning opportunity, and stuff will go your way. But I think too, just keeping that, persistence, keeping that motivation going, you're going to get turned down, but the wins when they do hit, there's nothing quite like it. So I would say, just, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Everyone has been in that position before, whether the CEO of your company, they started somewhere, or the top sales rep at your company, they were all nervous. Like it's something that, you just got to dive in, and it will be rewarding if you do put in the work and focus on what you can control.
I love it. This has been awesome. I learned quite a bit. Well, tell us how the world, or however many people watch this, probably less than like 10 people, but who cares? How can the people find you? And if they want to reach out to you about any questions, advice, tips, whatever it may be.
You guys can find me. You can email me at will.fisher@smartsheet.com. Otherwise, LinkedIn, you can search me, Will Fisher, Fischer. Or yeah, Instagram if we can get on that personal level. WFisher12. So
yeah. Hey, personal. That's how you build rapport. That's sales, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
that's showbiz. All right. Well,
thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Awesome interview. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.
Peace.